such an asshole.
Ba-da-da-da, bum, bum, bum. Ba-da-da-da, bum, 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 bum. Ba-da-da-da. Fa-na-na-na-na-na. You guys watch the Andy Griffith show. It was pretty good. There was no fat black asses shaking with thongs in them. It was like, oh my goodness, the worst. I don't know. Though I will say, Barney and Andy did get some pretty good looking gals in there. They were always getting some good looking gals. It's a charming show. All right, let's go to the request. If you have a request, you go to SO thinking this stuff and the money give to me. Hi, Cappy. I'd like to request a video covering this topic. My apologies if you have covered it before, but I am new to your channel. We may have touched on it, but not this directly. I'm 39 years old. I'm one of those people who had the proverbial all-American childhood and youth. I lived in a two-parent household, grew up in the suburbs, went to good schools, was part of school clubs, sports teams, Boy Scouts. I also went to a good church, went on vacation twice a year to nice places with my parents. My father also had a similar upbringing, went to a good university, got a great job, married my mother, bought a nice house, raised 3 children. Wow, geez, Andy. My father was also great with his finances, had a solid 401k and good investments. You could say he has lived out the American dream until the old age he is now. What I cannot understand for the life of me is the following. My father never gave me the advice to achieve what he did. He never gave me the advice regarding women, education, finances, or life in general. He was always kind and present, and we get along, but he didn't teach me a damn thing, and is bewildering to me because I have struggled mightily and haven't achieved a fraction of what my father achieved. It is only through the red pill that I have gotten my true education, and I am just now starting to get my life together at the age of 39 with the information I have gotten throughout my community or through this community. It never should have taken this long, though. My question is why boomer parents, particularly fathers, were not willing to pass on the advice that allowed them to live out the American dream so easily. Am I the one and only one in such a predicament? No, you're the rule, not the exception. Pretty much everyone who was raised by boomers were given the wrong information. Have you not seen the millennial? You're a millennial. You know what happened. I would love to know. Thanks. So, all right. So let's go through a couple things here. All right. First, in the individual case of your dad, I'll get to general things later, but the individual case of your dad, and this is nothing wrong. Like, I do not sense maliciousness on your dad's part. He didn't do this to you maliciously or even out of laziness or indifference. It sounds like your dad, I don't want to use the word privileged. He had a good upbringing. You had a good upbringing. Like, nothing wrong happened. So y'all didn't have to learn any street smarts, if you know what I'm saying. Because if you're 39, what, the 90s? That's about right. So the 90s were a great decade. And if you go back to your grandfather's era and then your dad growing up 50s, 60s, 60s, 70s, those times were on easy mode. GDP growth was almost twice as what it is now. We didn't have the debts. Certainly didn't have the technology either. But it sounds like it's not a criticism of your dad or you, but you guys were upper middle income, it sounds like. And when you get that, and then all of a sudden dad sends you off into a world that has certainly changed, which I'll get to later, but puts you into the real world, that right there is a huge disadvantage. There's no street smarts. There's no like, yeah, you got to work 40 hours a week and go to school. There's no doing without. Like, your dad, did he ever starve? Maybe, did he serve in Vietnam? Maybe. I mean, something to, like, hey, you ought to raise your kid a little tough. But it sounds like there weren't a lot of problems, which can ironically be a problem because you are going to run into problems in the real world. All right. So it just seems like he had kind of easy background. You had kind of an easy background. There wasn't anything wrong. He did the same thing his dad did, and you probably turned out all right. He's got the family. He's still married. He's lived a great life. So that's about the only thing I could say specific to your dad is he didn't know. Like, he didn't know any better. So that's individual. But when it comes generally, why the baby boomer fathers didn't raise their children right, they had no clue, and the world has definitely changed. They were the generation where it switched, right? They were brought up, gee willikers, your dad probably watched the Andy Griffith Show, all right? That was America. I know it was television, all right? But that's the world. And then late 60s, early 70s happened. 70s was a shit decade, trust me. You were born in the 80s then. 80s was a great decade, but you missed that key shift where the baby boomers and all their infinite wisdom thought they knew better than the World War II fucking generation. And I remember my dad included, but the baby boomer men just got blindsided by divorce. Blindsided. Now, keep in mind, by the time they're getting divorced, now this isn't your dad, so he's a different world, but generally speaking, they were in their 30s, roughly. And so they're like, what are they doing? They thought it was aberrant. Like this wasn't a permanent change. That feminism was just this quaint little thing that was, it's a fad. They'll go away. They'll stop burning their bras. And there are other socioeconomic changes fundamentally happening within the United States that would make it that the environment, the cultural, economic, sociological environment that you grew up in was absolutely not the one your dad grew up in, and certainly not the one your grandfather grew up in, which at your age, I would say one of the most foundational changes is that the focus was no longer on the family. And sadly, if you go read my latest book, A World Without Men, women, I hate to be so simplistic or condemning, women are trained to hate you. Now, not all of them do, and they wouldn't say, "Oh no, we're not doing it," but they're maybe not consciously trained, but trained or conditioned, but they are pushed to not look at men as teammates, as compatriots, compadres, but you're looked at the competitor at competitors at best, adversaries at worst. And that is the number one change that happened between your grandfather and your generation. Now, my generation saw this with the baby boomers getting divorced. We didn't have the internet to make it clear, like, oh my God, women's opinion of men have fundamentally changed on a society-wide level, not necessarily individual. So we kind of got it. But with your generation, oh yeah, it's almost like a completely different. It's as different. Here's kind of an analogy you could do. It's like taking Julius Caesar, who's commanding all the legions in the Roman Empire, putting him through a time warp, and then putting him in charge of a World War II army. You'd be like, what the hell is all this? It's completely changed. The battlefield has changed. The weapons has changed. The goals have changed. Everything is completely different. And the life your grandfather had to master, tame, and become successful in, as well as your father, is completely different than the life you guys in your generation have now. And so the advice that your dad could give you, and this I think is the case of most, if your fathers even gave you the advice your fathers gave you was the advice that worked in 1961. Oh, geez, an F4 Phantom Air. It's like I always pick on Dave Ramsey and Dennis Prager because they're old. And they're like, oh, gee, the F4 Phantom. Let's send that to the front lines. I don't even know if there's an F4 Phantom that's still flying. And you're like, stealth technology, radar, slightly improved missiles. Yeah. So it's not malicious. It's not that your dad didn't want to. I almost guarantee you thought, well, my dad took me, and you just treat those girls nice, and you should go to college, and we go to church, and you can see it in the conversations, friends, colleagues, clients I've had where they talk to, particularly their mom, but their parents, they go back. Why haven't you found a girl? And they just gotta like, Ma, look at this. Have you not seen this? And then in one ear out the other, I believe what I want, tee. I don't know. You just wish you get the wrong. They don't really. I don't think they understand because they didn't grow up with that when they were kids, and they just don't understand it. But you're being given essentially military tactics that worked in 100 BC against the Carthaginians to go and mow down some German or attack the Germans in 1943. It just isn't going to work. You're going to get slaughtered, which your generation has in a metaphorical sense. And so I don't believe there's a maliciousness. I think your dad he was. And you got to admit, your old man, your mom didn't get divorced. They provided a good family for it. They did. They just, I don't know, things go so well in some cases, people don't see the underlying investment that their forefathers put into them. Like I look at some of my Asian friends with their parents, classic, tiger mom, Asian family. You will become a doctor. You will become an engineer. And they do. And they don't realize all the hell and nightmare they avoided in majoring in dumb shit or having debt. It's just, you will get married or not. You will major in engineering or you will become a doctor. And now you will invest in these things. And now you will whatever, get a master's degree. You will do these things. And I don't know, maybe some of the Asian guys in the audience can explain. Do they ever explain to you why that is? Or is it just because their parents said, and they're very stern with the pointing finger? Like, did your dad sit you down like, you see, son, supply and demand with economic surgeons, not a lot of them over here. I don't know why he sounds like Jimmy Stewart. That would be great. Oh my God. Oh my God. Somebody out there, we get in, like Frank Caliendo. You guys know Frank Caliendo? He can do the perfect voiceovers. All right. But he's a white guy. We get an Asian guy to do the perfect Jimmy Stewart. Oh, geez, Yang, I don't know why. We just did it all the time because that's what my grandfather did. Oh. It'd be great. No, we can't have that. That'd be too fun. We're not in a fun country anymore. Jeez, Lawrence. Oh, Angel gets her wings. Where were we? Before I thought of Asian Jimmy Stewart. I'm wondering how much of it is autopilot. Like you don't realize why some traditions are passed on, why certain wisdom is given. It's just my folks, you should do this. Why? It's just because you should. I'm your parent because I said so. That doesn't explain why, and it lessens the chance the kid's going to do it. So I'm wondering how much of your dad was just kind of, well, that's what my dad did, and didn't sit down and think. Because if you sit down and think like, well, the reason we do it this way is to capitalize on this opportunity in life or to avoid this bad thing that could happen in life. But if you don't understand the why, then because here's what I don't get. Like, didn't the boomers like see what the fuck was happening in the 80s and 90s? Like what was happening to the kids, like just becoming a bunch of psychopaths in the public school. And now we got the woke era and all that. Like, don't you see this would be more of a criticism, I guess, of my age, of my generation of parents. But certainly in the aughts, the boomers are still raising kids. Like, didn't you see this? Well, they didn't know. They didn't understand why you did these things. So they couldn't identify the problems. Like, oh my God, society's changing this way, which means this all important thing, like stable employment, physical beauty and strength, love, family, like that. They didn't understand the why. And so they're like, well, those kids nowadays, I don't want to get involved, I like them to make their own decision, which is English for I'm a lazy fucking parent who doesn't want to parent. I don't want to tell my child no. But I don't think that was the case of your dad. Again, I sense not a single malicious thing in your old man. I think he just didn't fucking know. And it worked in 1961, and I asked out Peggy Sue to the sock hop. Why don't you go out there and be swell, son? And then you just get butchered and mowed down by an MG-42. I had my shield from 100 BC, signed by Julius Caesar himself. Why'd he do that to me? So, and that's where I think, look, I don't believe most of your dads didn't love you or didn't care. I do believe most of the dads were lazy. I do believe that. I don't, depending on whether, generally speaking, half your dads got divorced. They probably had other shit to worry about. Because I don't know what was going on in the 80s and certainly not the 90s. I was going to school in the 90s. But I don't think fathers woke up, I'm going to give my son this shit piss poor advice. They're like, yeah, just be yourself. Blah, blah, blah. And you also have to keep in mind that the almighty pussy was speaking at that moment. and we must all bow down and listen to and heed the desires and demands of the almighty Pussy. And so I don't know that there was this whole like, oh yeah, women are equal and all this other stuff, and they should be treated equal and below and all that other. But what do you want? Oh, and the social sciences are like, oh, and we should be more sensitive towards each. Oh yes, oh okay, yeah. And there was like an open mindedness, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, why wouldn't you? Like, sure, yeah, you're part of this family. You're a partner. What do you? Of course, we could ship our kids off to daycare. Yeah, you got to work. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure those 23-year-old girls with their masters in babysitting are going to take great care of our children. There'll be no problems with this. And that's, I guess, another thing where children were outsourced to daycare and as early as possible to the state and schools where you are disproportionately raised by women, whether you like it or not. And there's not to say that women shouldn't have a role in raising kids, but you can't have it so skewed on one side. Well, now you're fine. Be a nice guy. I mean, what's the dating advice you got from your mom and your teachers, right? I mean, what the most worthless piss shit advice you could ever. But yeah, I think your old man was probably busy working. I think everybody else's old man was busy getting divorced and having bigger issues on his mind. I think they were all working too. And there was, it was the 70s and 60s where freedom and women and feminism. Okay, sure. They were kind of like, yeah, okay, do it, all right. Not knowing this was going to be a horrifically bad social science experiment done on generations of children down the road. And I would say the economy was going to fall apart. The 80s and 90s, even the aughts were great economic times, relatively speaking. Maybe not great. They were good. But culturally, the non-financial aspect, and even now today, the financial aspect, it all went to shit. People are worthless, sad, whiny, victim, parasitic, fat, obese, mentally ill pieces of shit. And there's no way your old man could have seen it. No way. And so really, imagine the advice Andy Griffith would give Opie, and now he's going to give somebody. Think about that. The advice it's war. Like, okay, you got to get your defenses up. Trust no one. Don't believe anything they say. I'm not even being joking right now. You think about, don't believe a word they say. They're lying. They don't even know they're lying. They don't even know what they're saying or talking about. Okay, all employers lie. They're going to fuck you over and stab you in the back. Everyone's out to get you. That's modern day America. It is. It's modern day America. Whatever you're going to buy on the internet, it ain't going to work in 2 months. Auto mechanics ain't going to do their fucking job. So you always got to check and audit their work. Really? That's what's happened. Whereas at least in the 50s or 60s, there was some trust. There was some ethics and integrity. It's racist. Yes, we're aware. Knee-jerk reaction crowd. Thank you. We're aware. Yep, it's because we couldn't possibly have 50s work ethics and standards and quality minus the racism. That would be impossible, right? Because they're just conjoined. If you're working hard and being disciplined and having honor and integrity, by God, you must be a racist. It's not possible to be a good, honest, honorable man or woman and not be racist. Can't possibly do that. So let me kind of go through here, make sure I got all the points. 39 years old, people, American childhood, two-parent, Father also had a similar upbringing, went to good university. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I was going to point, like, college is the classic example. Your grandfather probably told your dad, go to college. Your dad did. He made a lot of money. Why wouldn't he recommend that to you? So there's that. Father also great with his finances, solid 401k, American dream, boo. Here's another thing I would kind of point out in defense of your father. How are you doing compared to your millennial peer group? Like compared to the other 39-year-olds, how are you? I know it didn't go the way you were expecting, but to really judge what's your father's responsibility and how he did versus how it's just society going to shit. Like compared to the millennials, are you doing well? Like I'll get some clients in here, Cappy, I'm 21. I didn't go to college and all I did was work and I saved up $21,000. And I feel like a loser because all my friends are graduating this year. And I'm like, you're 21, you have $21,000, you have no debt? Dude, you're winning. You're like in the top 2% of Zoomers. And so what I would do, your dad's not malicious. Something he must have told you did well. I'm betting because you came from a nuclear family. Your dad didn't sit you down and teach you how to replace an alternator. Fine. But he's good with his finances, right? Do you have a lot of debt? How are you compared to the average 39-year-old? Are you doing better? Because I'll tell you right now, the millennials are the most suffered generation. They will be the second most suffered generation once the Zoomers live a little bit longer and have more time to suffer. But right now, they're the most suffered generation. Are you doing better than the average Zoomer or a millennial, I would say? Kind and present, get along, didn't teach me a damn thing. Belligerent, a struggle, mightily chief. It's only through the red pill I've gotten a true education. Right. And okay, and so this would be another one. Again, there was your dad. How much of that is women changing, going from pro men to anti men, essentially? Ladies, if you wanted, you can write. I'll read an email, ladies. You could say women don't hate men. You could explain why. Okay, fine. Then show me why women like men or aren't competitors or adversaries. You don't hate them, but you want to compete against, fine. But in the red pill community, which skews towards women, I think it was society that changed, and rendering moot any traditional advice that would have been given. Having to have kind of, not to brag or toot our own horn, Gen X go through the internet. You imagine if the internet wasn't here, we'd still be lost. The internet came right in time, and then old man Rollo writes Rational Mail. I get the finance aspect of it. Now everyone's figuring it out. And whereas your dad had you for 18 years to prepare you, we get you for like a little bit of time, like here's a book, here's an hour video. And it's like, we got to deconstruct everything you thought was the way it was and give you the information, the truth and reality. But I would really blame that more on society. I wouldn't necessarily blame that on your father. Now, I do hold boomers, parents in general, but fathers as well, in being lazy. I don't care what the fuck was going on in your life. I don't give a shit if you guys were going through divorce or not. The amount of information they never taught you how to fix cars. They didn't force you like, hey, we're fixing cars today, or we're going to learn about this computer shit. I think that was more of the hands off. Oh, we got a corporate 80s, make a lot of money, kind of keeping up with the Joneses type of stuff. Because it wasn't like your parents, or, I guess your mom too, but dads weren't they weren't neglectful, but this is why I call them, present but absent fathers. They were present but not participating. And I always kind of looked at the Leave It to Beaver or the Andy Griffith Show. That was the format. Wally and the Beef screw up. Ward comes in with the explanation. He sits down, explains to Wally and the Beef. There wasn't, no one sat me down and says, let me tell you about IRAs. Let me tell you about degree choice. In part because they didn't know, part because they didn't care. Some other shit was going on. Whereas if I ever had kids, holy shit, I'd go to the Asian tiger parents like, here, hold my beer. Watch this. I'm going to do exactly what you did, but my kid's going to come out even better. You know how? You know how I'm going to do it? Like, there's no way. No way you could improve upon our perfected parenting skills. No musical instruments. Yep. We're going to skip that bullshit. Going to skip right over it. That's going to free up 3 hours a night right there. My son's going to become a mechanic. My daughter's going to become a surgeon. And they're going to do it because they had extra time. They weren't learning the violin. How dare you cheat like that? You're cheating the rules. I'm breaking the rules. Son comes up, Dad, can I learn classic piano? Hell no. You're going to learn C++. You're going to learn COBOL. You're going to make, I could, if you gave me my kid, 16 years old, make sure my kid's making $50 an hour. You watch. Now my son, what's your son doing? My son got his driver's license. Yeah, my kid made $100,000 this year. He's scoping out property overseas. He works remote. He moved out when he was 14. I collect a commission. I'm his agent. I'm his manager. Oh, good. Your kid finally got some pubes and learned how to drive. Great. Yeah, all right, that's good. Yeah. Is he reciting the flute? He's got his fluting practice. He's performing over at the shit high school with all the other public kids. That's fine. No, I just homeschooled mine. Yeah, no, he was reading at a fifth grade level by 3 years old. Ah. Fucking noobs. Never taken this long though. All right, here. It should have never taken this long though. Right. It shouldn't have, but it did. And you're 39. You figured it out before you were 40. Some people never figure out. Like, what percentage of millennial men are still like, oh my God, we need more socialism and other people's money. Oh. How many of them are still like that? How many of you, really, how many 39-year-old millennial boys, we're talking men, want a student loan bailout versus just getting off their fucking ass and go work in a second job? I mean, you figured it out. Thank God. Question: why boomer parents are not willing to pass on the advice? I don't think they had the advice. I really don't think they had it. And what advice they had wouldn't work today. Seriously. And it lived the American dream so easily. They had it easier. They had it easier. They did. They had nuclear families. All right. So link below. Look, again, nearly all the client requests I get is because your dads weren't there. There's some, there are others. But I have a catch-all course called The Dad You Never Had. So if you want to take a look at that course, I have it linked below. It goes through everything your dad should have told you. It's available on Teachable if you just want to search it. The Dad You Never Had. It's $150 plus tax. And then you don't have to wait till you're 39 to figure this out. And there is a women's component. It's co-ed. I have it for women too. I tell girls, like, look, if you want to get a guy, here's what you got to do. And that's why I don't think a single woman has signed up for it, because I didn't say, be a fat, loud, obnoxious pig and do whatever you want. That'll get the guys. Okay, here you go, Oprah. Here's $1 billion. And Oprah's like, oink, oink, oink. Oh my God, thank you, ladies, for giving me $1 billion. Because I told you what you wanted to hear. We should look up, we should follow up the Oprah women, the women who listened to Oprah in the 80s and the early 90s. You see where those women are. You know what they are? They're fucking miserable. I know. Ask me how. All right. 2 super chats. Let's go to the super chats and have ourselves a treat. Bill Clinton touched Glenn, $5. You've said double your income if you have a good boss and no, 30% more income. 30% if you got a good boss. Now, maybe I said double if you had good boss and coworkers, but your boss is worth 30% your salary. Would you deduct from that for a bad shift, 4 p.m. to 4 a.m., manageable for a few years? Ooh, yeah. Well, you should be being paid a shift differential, right? I'm just guessing. I know I did when I worked security. You took the night shift. I would not factor in the bad nighttime shift, just because that's the nature of the job. And yeah, you're right. It's only manageable for a few years. I was not able to. I did the like the legit dog shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Some do midnight to 8. I did that for about a year and a half, and then you just can't. Well, at least my brain couldn't take it anymore. You need to see the sun. So for oh God, in it wintertime, that was horrible. You never saw the sun. I wonder why I was so pissed off all the time. Oh well. Yeah, you can only do that for a few years max. And I was doing it full time. I did do a lot of nighttime security, but it would start 5. You do the second shift, so you did see the sun. That's more possible if you're changing it up, but you can't solely do the night shift for years on end. Scarlett, $10. Women don't hate men as long as they are well built, have the shit together, and are climbers. Those outside of this aren't really men. I don't think most women hate men. I do believe most women are adversarial and competitive towards men. And the vast majority, we're talking the men as a group. Yes, there are some select men that they will like and they'll change the rules for. Generally, if we were to use it with one word, women have disdain for men, generally speaking. And it is, go look. Just go look. What Star Wars now has a gal that Or Frank, that woman hates men. I got it. But don't tell me we're friends. Don't tell me you're on our side. Like, again, go watch my video. What would it look like if women like men? Will they be sweet and they'd be kind? They'd have dresses, they have long hair, and they'd be physically attractive. They say yes to dates. They wouldn't say the way. Guys, here's another thing. Don't deny your eyes. I'm not saying look for a reason that women are. You don't have to. You just see it. Like, what would it be like if women like guys? How would you be treated? You would not be treated the way you are now. You would. I'm not saying they'd be bowing down and worshiping you either, but they would just be a lot more pleasant and nice. Drew, $5. Do you think being a range safety officer is a good part-time job at a gun range? I'm thinking about doing it because I'm certified. I mean, what do they pay? Yeah, I guess, sure. I mean, you got to be on your game there. It's not like nighttime security where you could practically fall asleep and nothing's going to matter. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, whatever you want to do, Drew. It sounds fun, I guess. I'd avoid. I wouldn't want to do it though because you got to be the dick, and it might even be legal responsibility. I remember going to a couple gun ranges. Well, not a couple. One where I'm setting my gun up, and I shot it right, and I don't know if it was a client or the safety officer, but you can't put your gun there. You got me. I'm like, okay, all right, just packed up my gun. I got a gift certificate, gave it back to him. I'm like, what was that? I'm like, I'm not coming here again. Like, this is ridiculous. Drew, $2. Work nights for 6 years and it took a toll. Yeah, it does. It does take a toll. Drew, $2. Nights is only good as long as you're in school. Yeah, you have to have some other thing to go, or like writing a book, like William Faulkner, I think, did, or Cappy did. All right, link below. The dad you never had. If you need some fatherly advice so you don't fuck up, I don't know, the remaining 60. You're 20. Do you want to fuck up the next 60 years of your life, or do you want to drop $150 on my course now? Like, oh, that's how the rules work. All right, see you guys later, Toodles.